Don't Depend on Daddy is an unfiltered safe space, empowering young professionals to build independence in their 20s and beyond, whether it be personal, professional, or financial. Regardless of your age, relationship status, or job title, the most consistent person in your life is you. So join me and let's build our independence together. Enjoy! Hello and welcome back to Don't Depend on Daddy, the podcast. My name's Michela. I am your host and I am so excited for today's episode. We have a guest on the show this week. Her name is Kate Robb and she is an Etsy seller. I'm super excited for you to hear everything she has to share. Before we get into a quick rundown of what you can expect in this episode, I am going to very quickly run through my housekeeping, usual stuff. So first things first, as always, you can get $10 off the personal finance dashboard using the code podcast1. That is a podcast exclusive code. If you ever have any issues with it, just send me an email. And I also want to remind you about my 2 brand new templates as of the beginning of 2025. We have the basic budgeting template and also my fire planner. The basic budgeting template is if you are just getting started on your financial journey and you want a tool to give you a snapshot of your monthly expenses and get in the habit of tracking your expenses and your savings and all of that, the basic budgeting template is for you. If you are looking to map out your journey to becoming work optional or financially independent and you want to plan for your retirement and really hone and identify how much money to put towards your different accounts for retirement, then you want to check out the Fire Planner. I think that the personal finance dashboard and the fire planner go very, very well together. So highly recommend bundling those. And like I said, you can get $10 off when you use the code podcast1. And I think that's all of the updates that I have, or the housekeeping that I have. I mean, obviously you should also buy my books. Oh, if you've been enjoying the show, can you leave me a kind podcast review? And if you're watching this on YouTube, can you leave me a comment, subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I am really trying to not only grow the podcast this year, which I'm definitely doing, but expand my content outside of Instagram and TikTok. I've talked about this a little bit on my Instagram, but I'm just having a really hard time this year with content. I don't know if it's algorithm changes or, me just developing as a person, but I'm enjoying YouTube. I'm enjoying the podcast. I'm spending a lot more time and energy in this space, and any support you have, it's free to support, to leave a review. Kind ones only, please. And I would really appreciate it. Only if you think I deserve it. If you don't love the podcast, obviously you don't have to leave a review. But if you are coming back every week and you haven't left me a review, I would very much so appreciate it. With that in mind, let's get into the TLDR on today's episode, which is a conversation with my dear friend, Kate Robb. So a quick background on Kate. She is a former teacher turned tech recruiter turned full-time entrepreneur, and she helps creative people build diverse income streams that don't feel like work, from selling print-on-demand products and digital wall art on Etsy to monetizing content online. Her mission is to make self-employment feel approachable and achievable, especially for young women who've been told a 9-to-5 is the only viable path. Let me just say, I am obsessed with Kate. I think what she's doing is so cool. Basically, in this episode, I discovered Kate, I think through one of my creator friends, if I am remembering correctly. And her biggest pillar on social media that she talks about, but also one of the ways that she makes money, is she is a print-on-demand Etsy seller, which is so fascinating to me. So in this episode, we cover really a lot from her career journey and navigating the pivot from being a teacher to, she pivoted to tech recruiting, and then she pivoted again to selling print on demand and diversifying her income streams. We also talked about diversifying your income streams and what all of her different income streams are, because yes, she is an Etsy seller, but she also does a little bit of content creation. She does a little bit of social media management. There are a handful of different ways that she makes money that I find really interesting. Then we talked about Etsy and why selling on Etsy is a really great side hustle if you don't want to be a creator or an influencer, because she doesn't even share her Etsy pages or her shops on her social media because it will get in the way of the Etsy algorithm. And so you don't have to show your face. You don't have to create content to make, substantial money on Etsy. She shares how much money she made last year on Etsy as well, which I found was really interesting. It's just a great in my opinion, side hustle. And it's something that I personally am like selfishly super interested in. So I was really excited to hear a lot more about it. We talk about what print on demand is and how you can get started with Etsy, how to optimize, what are the exact steps that you need to take, and then also selling on Etsy versus selling digital products on like your own website. So lots of great information in here. I think if you are someone who is interested in increasing your income, but you don't want to be a content creator and you still want to exercise like the creative juices, you want to get a little bit more fulfillment outside of your day job, Etsy, I think, is a really awesome option. I never really thought about it. And now I'm like, I need to take Kate's courses and learn how to do Etsy because I just think it's a great, it's not entirely passive, but like it could be if you do it correctly. So, all that to say, all of Kate's info is obviously in the show notes. She does have a few courses as well if you're interested. I highly recommend, if you're interested in Etsy, that you follow her on social media because she shares a ton about Etsy, but also about all of her other income streams as well. And I think you're going to love this episode. So, with that, let's get right into it. Hi, Kate. Thank you so much for coming onto the show. I'm excited to have you here. Can you kick us off with a little bit of background on your career journey and how you got started with your business and Etsy and all the things?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here as a longtime listener of the pod. My career journey is kind of non-traditional, I would say. So I had no idea I ever wanted to start my own business. I knew that I didn't fit in with like a traditional corporate job, but I didn't know what path that would actually look like for me.
Mhm.
So I graduated from college in December of 2018 with a history degree. And at that point, I had been accepted into Teach for America, which is basically a teacher preparation program. So I was placed to teach high school history in Memphis. I moved down there that summer. I started teaching, and my school was kind of unsafe. We had a lot of lockdowns, a lot of instances that were just kind of scary. And so I decided I still wanted to teach, but I wanted to move closer to home in an environment I was more familiar with. So I moved back to Pennsylvania and I took a paraeducator job, took a pay cut, loved what I was doing, but then the pandemic happened and my program was eliminated. So I wasn't teaching in a traditional classroom at that point. I was working in an alt ed program. So kids who had been expelled from their traditional schools. And they basically sent them all back to do cyber school at their home school. So at that point, I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew that education was going to be forever changed by the pandemic. And so I started looking at jobs in like nonprofit administration, and I got a job working for AmeriCorps, recruiting AmeriCorps members and then managing a local grant here. I think it gave me a really nice career pivot, but at the same time, I was starting to realize that if I stayed in the nonprofit world, I was not going to be able to reach the financial goals that I had. And so that was a really hard decision to make of like, how do I keep helping people and doing this work that I love while also paying off my student loans or like buying a house someday? So at that point, I started looking for recruiting jobs in the tech world, thinking that that would give me more flexibility. I could volunteer in my free time, but I could still have this career that paid me better. I took my first tech recruiting job, doubled my salary, and had so much better work life balance that I started side hustling. And one of the ones that I had heard of was print on demand on Etsy. Started my first store in the summer of 2022. And 6 months after that, I was laid off from my tech recruiting job. And I decided to give myself a year and see what I could do with it. How could I scale additional income streams and basically take it as like a gap year? And that's what I did. And I've been self employed ever since.
Okay, so many things about that I love because I've never heard your career story like start to finish. I think it's so interesting because everyone who I talk to who's like in the online space, the main theme is like the pandemic was sort of that turning point of how can I get creative? Because that's similar to my story too. It's so fascinating how many businesses and career changes were planted during COVID because I didn't realize that like other people were doing that when I was doing that. So, important side note there. The other thing that's so interesting is I feel like our career journeys have a lot of parallels in that, like, first job wasn't really it. Second job was sort of the stepping stone. Third job was that big change, and
Right.
then ultimately ended up in self-employment. I'm curious if there are, and if there aren't, it's fine. If there are any parallels that you draw from your work experience to your current business? Because I know you make money in a few different ways, which we'll talk about,
Mhm.
but like, are there skills that you learned that you've transferred into what you're doing? Because a huge question that I get all the time is like, I work this job, let's say in marketing,
Mhm.
and, or I'll say something unrelated to social media, finance, like myself.
Right.
I work this job. It has nothing to do with social media or what I want to do. I have no idea how to take the skills I have and turn it into something. What are those parallels for you?
I think that the job that I have now, I consider to be like this culmination of my lived experience in my early 20s. So when I think about things like I started my career in a classroom
Yeah.
teaching high school history, and now through social media, I've eventually created opportunities for me to teach people about Etsy because that was something that I learned and I was passionate about. So it's like those parallels, but then also when you bring in things like as a tech recruiter, I had to figure out how to make a job seem marketable to a candidate.
Yep.
And now in my Etsy stores, I do that every day. I'm doing that when I'm pitching myself on social media. So
Yeah.
there's so many crossovers in ways that I never intentionally thought were going to be like lifelong skills that I was learning, but I wouldn't change anything about my early career for that reason.
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting, because I feel the exact same way about, like, I never thought that I would be teaching people anything, but when I was pivoting into business, I'm like, how can I take something that I feel passionately about and turn it into something that I can make more money from?
Hmm.
And so I love that you sort of discovered, okay, on this path I'm on, I'm not going to reach my goals and I'm going to do something about it. I think that's the
Right.
big differentiator from the people whose seeds were planted in COVID is like, okay, I'm actually going to make this change. And so
Yeah.
that leads me into my next question for you, which are all of your different income streams. Because I see you talking about this on your social media a ton. I
Yeah.
know you make money from Etsy, but what else are you doing to earn?
Yeah. So once again, none of this was planned. Like when
Mhm.
I got laid off from my tech recruiting job, I had my Etsy stores. At that time, I was like trying other side hustles that felt fun and creative. So I was like reselling clothing that I would thrift and things like that. But I decided in that gap year, I wanted to try everything. And if it worked, great. If it didn't, fine. And so shortly after I got laid off from my job, I started posting on TikTok. One of my first videos went viral, terrified me, and I deleted the TikTok app off my phone. I was like, I didn't actually want this. Like, I just wanted community. I wanted to like help people for free, but the comment section
Scary.
scared me. Yeah,
Going
exactly.
viral on TikTok, I feel like for any creator is like a canon event of like it has to
Yes,
happen to grow tough skin, but like it's terrifying when it
right.
happens.
And I feel like I was talking about my Etsy businesses, and to have
Yeah.
people who have like never met me be like, this isn't real. You didn't actually do this. I'm like, why would I just like create this page? And like, I'm not selling anything. Like, I'm not here to do anything. I'm just telling my story. And people are like, wrong. So
Mhm.
that terrified me. But then a few months later, I was like, I have this story to tell, and I'm sharing this knowledge with people for free. Like, I need to get my story out there. So I downloaded TikTok again. I started posting, and that fall I finally put like a link in my bio for brands to contact me. And I don't know why I didn't do this sooner because it was the exact same brands who I'd been organically talking about in all of my content for like close to a year at that point, who were like, "Hey, we love your content. We'll pay you to make this exact same video. We just love that you're a partner of our brand and have like spoken so enthusiastically about us." So I started taking paid partnerships that way. And as my pages grew, I started getting opportunities for user generated content. I started getting opportunities for like freelance social media marketing for local businesses because let's be real, a lot of brick and mortar local businesses just don't have capacity to create content for themselves.
Mhm.
So, towards the end of 2023, I guess approaching 1 year of self employment, I had my hands in a lot of different things. Um, And now looking back, I guess as we approach the middle of 2025, I have 8 total income streams. So I have Etsy print on demand. I have an Etsy digital wall art shop where I sell digital files. I have paid partnerships, which also come with affiliate income. I have user generated content, freelance social media management, and then I sell courses that I've developed on starting Etsy stores. And then I also have my interests and my investments.
Yeah.
So I have my hands in a lot of different places, but I love it. And I feel like I'm doing a job that I love every single day, even though no day looks the same.
Yeah, it's super cool how many income streams you have because I want to have more income streams. Like I have in my business, I have two key income
Yeah,
streams that drive like most of my revenue. But as I've thought about it, like I have affiliate income, I do
right.
speaking engagements that are paid, but like I want to have more income streams. So you inspire me in that way of like,
Yeah,
I don't really do any UGC content. I would love to do social media management or like social
yeah,
media consulting for small brands because
yes,
I feel like as creators, you learn so much about what works, what doesn't work, content that converts, content that's for brand awareness. It's so much more complex, I feel like, than we're ever given credit for.
yeah,
And I think that creators would make the best social media managers. So I think it's super cool that you do all of that.
yeah.
I'm curious now, I want to pivot to Etsy because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
Etsy is really what you're known
Yeah,
for. And it's
yeah.
also selfishly something I'm super interested in learning more about. So, can you share how you got started on Etsy? Like, what were the first few steps that you took? Where did it even come from?
So interesting enough, when I was thinking about pivoting out of the nonprofit space, I went to coffee with a mentor
Okay.
and I was just talking to her about like, how do you make that? Like, if I do want to stay in nonprofit, how do I make this work financially? Because I'm not going to get a raise. There is no bonus structure. Like, what am I doing? And she was like, oh, I have side hustles. Like, one of my favorites is print on demand. Like, I sell t-shirts on Etsy. And I was like, I am not getting into screen printing. Like, I'm not buying a Cricut. Like, she was like, oh no, like you don't have to do any of that. I just design the shirts and then I work with a fulfillment partner who actually ships them to my customers. And I was like, okay, that's maybe like an idea for me. I like planted it in the back of my head, but it wasn't until a year later when I actually had time that
Yeah.
I tried it. Um, and so, pretty much the reason that I chose to go with print on demand is because one, I had no upfront capital to invest into a side hustle. Like, I didn't want to buy inventory, I didn't have the space to set up like a screen printing operation, but I like designing. Like, I've always had kind of that creative passion. And so I like the idea of just being able to start with a basic Canva subscription and design these products. And then I also like that Etsy handles a lot of the scary sides of running a business. So things like I didn't know how taxes work. I didn't know how, to set up my own website or any of that. And so having this marketplace that was kind of designed to take that pressure off of creators
Yeah.
was super appealing to me. And so that summer, I just started posting listings. My first listings were terrible. They were like awful designs, but I just was so committed to like learning what worked. So every day I was posting new listings, figuring out like what was resonating with my customers, and then I would learn from what was working.
Yeah.
Um, and I just fell in love with it. Like, I think so many people start an Etsy side hustle, think they're going to post 10 products and like make $10,000. But the truth is, like, you have to go into it with an attitude of actually enjoying the process and finding joy in that journey. Otherwise, you're going to burn out. It's not going to be very fun.
Yeah, I feel like that's how pretty much every business is a lot of times. And I think this is sort of the sentiment online now, seeing so many people's, I always say, like, you're seeing online someone's chapter 10. You didn't
Yeah.
see all of the chapters before that when they had no idea what they were doing. But my original point was, I think a lot of people see, for example, like a print on demand business and say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like that seems easy, I can do it. And they think that just because they get started, immediately they're going to see that success. But for
No.
any business, it's like a year to 18 months runway of seeing no movement on it until you
And,
actually start to see like real,
right.
consistent income.
And I think that is the cool thing about print on demand is because there is very, very little capital involved. You
Hmm.
can see profitability a lot sooner because it's not like you're
Yeah.
paying rent. It's not like you're buying like machinery, any of that kind of thing. So
Can you
that was really
explain what
cool.
print on demand is? Sorry to interrupt, but I
Yes.
know
No.
somebody's listening to this and has no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know either when I was first getting started. Literally, when my mentor mentioned print on demand
Yep.
to me, I was like, "What is that?" So print on demand is basically a business model where you are responsible for designing products, but then you work with fulfillment partners. So the company that I have worked with for my entire print on demand journey is called Printify. They have a network of print providers all across the US and internationally. So you can pick any product from their product catalog. They have everything from like t-shirts to crew necks, tote bags, mugs. Upload your design, and then they integrate directly with Etsy. So you publish the item from Printify onto Etsy's marketplace. You're not taking your own product photos, so you're using what we call mock-ups in order to show your customer what that finished product would look like. And then once your customer places an order, all of those details sync right back into Printify, and they actually fulfill and ship the order for you. So the profit there is basically however you price your item on Etsy, you have to pay Printify the production cost, but only after you get an order on Etsy, and whatever's left over there is your take home profit. So it
Okay.
has possibilities to be a fairly low maintenance stream of income once you make sales
Yeah.
because you're not actually fulfilling those orders yourself.
Interesting. And how did you discover Printify? Just through like your research of print on demand?
So there were a few different like competitors, I would say, in the print on
Okay.
demand space, and I ordered samples from multiple of them, and I kind of judged it based on what was the best product quality I could get with the lowest production cost, and that is where Printify came into play. At this point, Printify has merged with another large print provider called Printful, and so they are kind of one parent company now. Their
Okay.
product catalog has grown dramatically. Their customer support is amazing. So I just simply wouldn't work with anybody else at this point.
And so do you pay Printify too, or you're only paying Printify for the product fulfillment?
You're only paying them for the product fulfillment. So
Wow.
there's no cost to actually list. Like you pay 20 cents to Etsy when you list a product.
Yeah.
But in terms of like going in Printify and adding your design, there's zero upfront costs.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
My next question then is how do you figure out what to sell?
That is the hardest thing for beginners to actually figure out is so many people skip like the product research stage, but it's just like starting any other business is you have to figure out who you actually want to sell your products to before you list a product to Etsy. So I get a lot of comments that like Etsy's oversaturated or like you missed the boat.
Hmm.
But the truth is, like, we live in a society that is so obsessed with trends and always buying new things. And for better or worse, that always creates new demand on Etsy. So there are product research tools out there. The one that I recommend for beginners is called eRank. It's roughly like $6 a month, which once again, I'm all about starting side hustles as cheap as possible. So that's going to be the tool that you can start like $6 a month, one iced coffee, give it up and buy eRank instead. Um, and then you can actually figure out what customers on Etsy are searching for and how many other Etsy sellers are listing those products. When you can find those sweet spots of high search products that are low in competition, that's where you jump in.
Okay, interesting. I'm like really fascinated by this. So when
Yeah.
I'm done, I'm going to be like Chat GPT.
No, please.
Etsy. I also like
Yeah.
I should just take your course. I'm super
Yeah.
interested in that. Okay, so let's say that somebody wants to get started on Etsy. Are the
Hmm.
steps like, okay, I've decided I want to do print on demand. Then I'm
Hmm.
going to do some research on Etsy. But then what? Because I feel like the logistics and the tactics of getting started, like in theory, oh, this low cost, no cost to me upfront
Yeah.
way to make money, making thousands of dollars a month in revenue sounds really great
Yeah.
until you actually make an Etsy account and it's like, well, now what am I supposed to do? Like,
Right.
if you could give someone, I don't know, steps 1 to 5 of what they
Yeah.
should be doing and focusing on, what would those be?
I would say like your first step always has to be like vision boarding. Like
Okay.
don't start an Etsy store with no idea where you want to take it. I would think about it just like you're opening a brick and mortar boutique with less upfront cost. You still need to figure out what customer are you looking to serve, what products are people actively looking for right now, and how are you going to meet that customer need. So I would take time to just plan out like, what do you want your shop name to be? Who is your target demographic?
Yeah.
What products do you actually want to sell? And so once you do that, I would create your various accounts so that you have like your systems in place. So the ones I would recommend by far, Printify,
Mm-hmm.
your Etsy shop, obviously. Canva is a great beginner friendly tool. The only thing with Canva, you have to start with a blank canvas. So if that doesn't appeal to you, there are other tools like Playground and Kittl where you can actually start with template designs and change those. So that is another beginner friendly option. And then eRank, I would say, is your other tool that you absolutely need. You got to get signed up on all of
Yeah.
those. And then I would say figure out what niche you want to start targeting. So I always tell people you don't have to just focus on one niche. Like it's not like I want to make shirts for dog lovers. Think about when you walk into a local boutique or a local gift store. They have a nice like curation of products that your dream customer is going to love. But I would pick one to at least start with and
Okay.
try to create like 10 or 15 designs for products within that niche and get those listed to your Etsy store. Once you have some products out there, you can really start paying attention to the data, what's working, where customers are, like what is getting favorites, what is getting likes, are you making any sales? And that's going to cue you in to like, do you add more products within that niche or is it time to expand into something else?
What would be some examples of niches? Because when I think niche,
Yeah,
I'm thinking content niche. I'm not thinking
yeah,
product niche.
right. So I always say, like, when we think of a niche is just like, think of it as an umbrella. So let's say that your niche is like bachelorette. What the
Okay.
truth is that some people will start and they'll just think like, okay, bachelorette, that's my niche. But the truth is, you've got to go beneath that to sub niches. So, for example, what are some trending bachelorette themes right now? eRank can help you figure that out. One, for example, is like last toast on the coast. So, you
Okay.
want to make a last toast on the coast themed bachelorette shirt, obviously optimize that with the right keywords.
Yeah.
That's how you get found in Etsy search results.
Interesting. Okay, because I would have never gone there with niches. That's another thing
Yeah.
I'm going to chat GPT later.
Yeah.
What are some Etsy niches? I'm
Yeah.
really into my like AI doing
Oh my
everything for
gosh, me
me
too.
era. Like I don't know
I
what we were
know.
doing before that for ideation of things. It's just such a great starting point.
I
Uh,
know.
okay, wow. I'm fascinated by this.
Yeah.
Okay, so something else that you had mentioned earlier was the myth, we'll say,
Hmm.
that Etsy is too crowded and we've sort of missed the boat on
Yeah.
that. I know what you're going to say, but I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on why that's not true.
Yeah.
Because I think that just a general myth of starting business in 2025 is that it's too late. And that's obviously just not real. So,
Yeah.
why is Etsy still a great place to start?
I think that one of the key things that people forget about Etsy is that it is a marketplace with existing customers. So when you want to start like any type of business, finding customers is the hardest part. Etsy has built-in customers.
Mhm.
People are shopping on Etsy every single day, and the Etsy algorithm is trying to make sales for you. So that is the first part. The second thing is just that you have to remember like customers are constantly looking for new things, whether or not we like it. We live in a consumer society where people always want the newest, freshest thing. So that can be seasonally, but also Etsy has a ton of people who come looking for specific gifts and occasions. So, like Mother's Day is coming up. You could sell new Mother's Day gifts, but also bachelorette parties, the wedding space. Everybody uses Etsy for that. And so trends change and what people look for change. And whether or not you start now or you start a year from now, there's going to be new products that people are looking for.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I never really think about Etsy on like a day to day if I were to go
Yeah.
shopping or like buy things. But when I was planning my sister's bachelorette, that was the first place that I went.
Hmm.
So
And
fascinating.
there's people planning bachelorette parties every single
All
day,
year long. Yeah.
birthday parties, like events for kids, graduation, like the amount of occasions that happen is kind of crazy. And Etsy just released like their spring and summer trend report, and they had a stat in there that was like every single day there's like 20,000 purchases that happen related to book themed products. And I'm like,
Ooh.
that's one
Mm.
like niche,
Yeah.
right? That's like one
Yeah.
very small thing, and it's like 20,000 sales
Oh my
a
gosh.
day.
Maybe I need to start making some ACOTAR merch.
I know.
It'd be a
And
good.
I think Sarah J. Maas does like licensing with small businesses, which is so cool.
I mean, my wheels are turning
I
on.
know.
I'm gonna
Etsy
be like
did.
Googling and researching.
Yeah.
Etsy
Et-
after this?
Etsy named Literary Girl as one of their top trends of spring and summer 2025.
Huh. Good.
So
Back
that'd
reading.
be a good niche to
People
start
who
with.
aren't reading are missing out on life.
I know.
It's an entirely different conversation. I'm curious your thoughts on the role that social media can or shouldn't play in your Etsy store, because
Yeah.
I think a big thing holding people back too with starting a business is they think they have to be an influencer. But you very specifically do not share your Etsy stores on your social media and they're still
Yeah.
successful. So, can you explain that a little bit? Because
Hmm.
I don't want social media to be the barrier for somebody to try this.
Yeah. I think if you are terrified of social media, Etsy is like the side hustle for you because it
Okay.
still lets you be creative without showing your face. I do not share my shop names on my social media pages, primarily for a few reasons. One is that Etsy's algorithm, like any other algorithm, has different factors that it's considering. One of the biggest ones is conversion rate. So if I am sending a bunch of people from my educational social media pages onto my Etsy stores, they're just going to be there to like, look, how do I structure my listing titles? What mock-up photos am I using? All of that, but not actually to buy anything. And that could be really detrimental to my stores. The other reason is just people don't always have the best intentions, and I don't want my listings getting like ripped off. It already happens on Etsy sometimes, so like I don't need to put myself in any more spotlight in that sense.
Mhm.
But I do not share my shop names on social media. I've still made a sale every single day so far in 2025. And I also don't run ads. That's all because of the Etsy algorithm working behind the scenes. It's constantly looking for ways to make your products match with buyers who are interested in products that you're selling.
Okay, can you explain how that works a little bit for someone
Yeah.
who maybe they're setting up their first store? How do they think about the algorithm or setting it
So
optimally?
I would absolutely recommend checking out Etsy's seller handbook. They have an article in there called Listings That Convert, and it talks about the factors. So basically, what happens is when a shopper goes into the Etsy search bar and they type in a phrase, like let's say dog mom gift, it is going to rank the listings that it thinks that buyer is most likely to purchase first.
Okay.
And then things that can influence that are things like your keywords. So, how are you titling your listings? How is your listing description written? And then also, we have these things called tags that the shopper's not necessarily seeing on their end, but the algorithm is using to categorize that product.
Okay.
And so you once again, you want to use a tool like eRank in order to figure out where are those gaps in the market for those kind of high searched keywords that there's not a lot of competition on. So you want to sneak those into your listings, obviously. And it's also marketing. So it's making sure that your mock-up photo is like clearly
Yeah.
visible and makes someone want to click into the product. It's pricing yourself competitively. It's maintaining good reviews in your shop so that the SEO algorithm actually trusts you and wants to
Yeah.
promote your items to other customers. That is kind of the big picture there.
Huh. Okay, interesting. The
Yeah.
world of algorithms, like I'm going through a phase with algorithms lately where like I just hate them so much. But this
Yeah.
algorithm, I think what's so interesting is like Instagram, TikTok have such a specific ever-changing algorithm.
Yes.
This to me feels a little bit more like a YouTube
Yeah.
where the inputs, when done correctly, are going to generate a specific output. And it's not as much of a game of like,
Yeah.
is this going to work? Is this going to work? It's like, if you do these things consistently, you will see the result, which to
Right.
me is the most liberating, fantastic thing I've ever heard, and also why this sounds so appealing to me. So like I'm literally getting your course after we talk right now
It's just like
because
one, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, if you are designing products that people actually want to buy,
yeah.
Etsy makes money when their sellers make money. And I think this is another thing that people forget. But
Mhm.
Etsy stays afloat because they take fees off
Yeah.
of every sale that you make. So when people are like, the Etsy algorithm hates me, I'm like, the Etsy algorithm wants like that. The only
Yeah.
job is to make Etsy money. Etsy wants to make you money. So if you're not making sales, you're just not selling that something that people want to buy. And so it's about figuring out how to sell something that people actually want to purchase.
Yeah, and that's I think where people give up because it's like, "Oh, I have to
It
spend
is.
all this time and figure it out." But I feel like with digital products, when you
Mm-hmm.
find the thing that works, it's like an immediate unlock and a good
Mm-hmm.
validation of like, "I can do this." And that's the
Yes.
momentum you need to scale and actually like
Yeah.
make reasonable income from it. I'm
Right.
curious, you don't have to share exact numbers, but in the time that you've been on Etsy, How much money have you made? General range.
I don't honestly know because I feel like the past 3 years have been such a whirlwind, and I've also been trying to really detach myself from the
Mhm.
monetary outcomes of side hustles. I think that can be a really toxic thing that I was not prepared for when I started my
Yeah.
own business was like not every month has to outperform the last one.
Yeah.
I think that last year, according to my estimates, I made roughly $38,000
Wow.
from my Etsy stores. And that's profit. That
Yeah.
wasn't just
Like
revenue.
top line.
So I'm happy with that because I got other things going on in my life. Like my
Yeah.
Etsy stores are one of my streams of income. And that's more than I made as a teacher.
Yeah.
So
Which is crazy. That should be
crazy.
illegal. Like,
That
that's
should really
crazy.
be illegal. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So this is like a
Yeah.
sustainable side hustle for
Yeah.
people who are working a regular, like they're not doing it
Right.
full time.
And I
Okay.
never tell people like you're not going to make $10,000 overnight. You're probably not going to like quit your 9 to 5 job in six
Yeah.
months. Like that's just not the way this works. But if you're looking for something fun to supplement your nine to
Yeah.
five income, yeah, start here. And could you scale your business? Like if I was working on my Etsy stores 5 days a week, I could probably scale that income
Yeah.
dramatically. It's just I have other things that I like doing too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, to me, it sounds like the perfect side hustle for someone who doesn't want to be an influencer. They want to
Yep.
do something a little bit creative and they want supplemental income to
Yeah.
their, traditional job that they're doing. Because that's another thing that I've learned. Not everybody wants to quit their jobs, and that's totally fine. And I think we need to like encourage that a little bit more of
Yes.
like, we don't all have to be
Yes.
solopreneurs and like doing all of these miscellaneous things. I'm
Right.
curious now, since you've been doing this for a few years, what is the most like important lesson or biggest takeaway you've learned just from being self-employed and being in business? It doesn't have to be Etsy related.
I think honestly, the biggest thing that held me back for so long is thinking that I had to have it all figured out right
Mhm.
away. And I think there were so many limiting beliefs I had, especially around like taxes or health insurance or all these things that weren't problems, but I was making them out to be problems just because they were new and felt scary. And I didn't know people in real life who had already navigated those
Yeah.
things. It's kind of funny, like looking back now, where I'm like, I almost didn't start my side hustle because I was afraid of taxes. And now I just like pay an accountant to just like
Yeah.
do that for me. So don't let those things hold you back. Like nobody knows what
Yeah.
they're doing at the beginning. It's scary because it's new. And the more you do it, the more natural it's going to feel.
Yeah, totally. It's so interesting because I feel like a big excuse a lot of people make when they like really want to do their own thing, or maybe they have a side hustle and they want to quit, but they're too nervous to take that leap as they default to like, well, what will I do about health insurance? As if like you
Yes.
can't just buy it. Like it's crazy.
Right. And like, I don't know what, like, that was for
Me
me too.
too.
Like, I was like, I'm losing health insurance in 6 months. Like, guess I can't be a small business owner. And I was
Yeah,
like, this is
like
so dramatic.
it is so, but it's those kinds of things I feel like that you learn when you do, like, but nobody can handhold you through that. You kind of have to
No.
just deal with it,
Yes,
and be mentally ready to deal with it. But like all of those things,
exactly.
taxes, health insurance, 401k, like they're all such solvable, easy things. That's something that I've just learned, I think, over the last couple of months. Even the things that I put off in my head as like these are such big hurdles are actually so easy when you
Yeah.
just do them.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
love
Who
that.
would have thought?
Yeah, I love that lesson. Okay, I want to wrap up with a few like faster, we'll call them rapid fires, but you can
Okay.
elaborate on them as you see fit.
Okay.
So, number one is how do I increase my visibility as a new Etsy seller?
Okay. Increasing your visibility, I think, comes down to like, you got to put repetitions in. You're not going to post 10 listings and scale your shop off of 10 listings. So be willing to put the reps in, get some more listings out there, and then pay attention to like your shop stats. What is getting traction? And then what lessons are you learning from those listings?
Okay, so when you're thinking about listings, like how many listings should somebody have? And are all of those listings in the same niche? Are they all in the same shop? Like, how are we thinking about that?
I would always start with one shop. Don't open multiple Etsy stores
Okay.
until your first store is making consistent sales. Otherwise, you're just going to get overwhelmed. So I would start with one shop. I would start with one niche, to be honest. And typically, I don't recommend for beginners more than 3 product types. Like I personally, in my stores, still only sell crew necks, t-shirts, and tote bags. And I just started adding mugs into one of my
Ooh, that's a
stores
little
because
key because
I
nobody
know.
knows what you sell.
I know. So I would start simple. Like you
Okay.
don't have to sell these crazy things. And then I would start by like batch listing. So if you're already done the product research, you found out that like golden retriever mugs are trending. I don't know that they are, so don't
Yeah.
use that one as an example. But like, let's say they are. Make 10 different variations of golden retriever mugs,
Okay.
list them, and then you can move on to the next trend that you want to do. But then also pay attention to like which of those golden retriever mugs got a favorite? Is it the design layout? Is it the tags you used? Like you kind of need to
Hmm.
figure out why that's working and apply those lessons to your future listings.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Next question is what are the like indicators somebody should be looking at on their page if they're not getting any sales of like this
Mhm.
is something I should lean into?
So I would say if you're seeing views, but you're not seeing sales, you have what we call conversion problems. So it means that people are seeing your stuff, but for whatever reason, you're not actually able to get them to pull the trigger and convert into a buyer. This can be caused by a variety of things. It could be your mock-up photo is not strong enough to actually get somebody to see that item in their space and want to make a purchase. This could be your pricing. You could be priced a little too high. Similarly, people don't realize this, but you could be priced too low to where if someone looks at that item and they're like, that's kind of too good to be true, a little sketchy. I don't think I want to go through with that. So you need to kind of price yourself competitively, especially at the start. This could be things like your SEO is just a little bit off. And so you're not ranking as high and you're not getting as much visibility there. I always say it's like a science experiment.
Yeah.
You got to be willing to get in there and play. And what you can actually do is duplicate your listings and kind of A B test. So you can take that same listing, make a copy of it, change the mock up photo,
Yeah.
change your price, change your tags, and see like,
Okay.
did that convert? Okay, well, then it was my mock up photo. Okay, well, then it was my pricing. You'll start to figure out what's wrong.
How frequently should somebody be going in and looking at these analytics? Like, is it an every week thing, once a month? Like, what's a good runway for that?
If you are a beginner Etsy seller, it is so normal to not make your first sale within like 30 to 60 days, I would say.
Okay.
And that's because the Etsy algorithm is like trying to figure out what you're selling. Like it has to index you as a seller. So if it's still like your first 30 to 60 days, I would not freak out if you're not seeing a ton of traffic or anything, especially if you are just focused on like getting listings in your store. That should be your only priority as a
Okay.
beginner. I would say that you don't want to obsess about your shop stats
Yeah.
because when you're just spending time obsessing about that, you're not doing the actual work to like get more listings in your store. So make it like a weekly routine. Take a look at them. You can do Etsy recommends 30 days for the clearest picture of your data, but you can break them down week by week.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. My
Yeah.
last question for you. I think this is the most fun. What are
Okay.
the pros and cons of selling on a marketplace like Etsy versus selling a digital product on your own website?
This is so fun and something that I wished was like talked about more. So if I was a true beginner with no business experience, hands down, I would start an Etsy
Yeah.
store because Etsy has so much of the framework set up where you don't have to think about also the logistics of running a business and marketing your product. So I think huge pro for Etsy is the, infrastructure.
There.
Con of that is you have to recognize that Etsy does own, you're renting a space from them. And so if your shop is suspended or if Etsy for whatever reason goes under and shuts down, your business goes down with it. And so that's why diversification of income though is so important to me. I think other pros of Etsy, you get built-in traffic.
Yep.
Cons of that, you pay fees. Etsy fees are not as bad as people make them out to be. Probably going to cost you like 15% on a sale, but you haven't driven any of your own traffic.
Yeah.
And so that's something I would keep in mind. I would say those are probably the biggest ones. When you're selling your own products, better profits, a lot more work in terms of
Mhm.
marketing,
Yeah.
a lot more
Totally.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because I feel like I know you sell your own products in Etsy. I
Mm-hmm.
only sell my own products. I've never dipped my toes in Etsy, so I have no
Mm-hmm.
idea. That to me almost feels like more work just because it's so
Yeah.
new. I will say it's so interesting the difference in the marketing of it all because obviously selling your own products on your own website, it is your responsibility to get eyeballs on there and like no
Yeah.
amount of SEO is going to do that for you. Like
Right.
you really really do have to be on social media in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion and
Yep.
on it for a long time because when I even think about my own digital products like Now I generate consistent monthly
Mhm.
income from those, but, like, I'm constantly selling them and talking about them, and I have now, like, a long-standing library of content that still generates people to my
Right.
pages to learn about them, and that takes, I think, way more than 30 to 60 days of training
Does.
the algorithm on Etsy.
Yes.
However, like you mentioned, you have a little bit more control over it, but I think
Right.
overhead is like so much higher, which is
It
why
is.
Etsy sounds so appealing to me, where I'm like, okay, I
So
could
nice.
potentially handle this as like
Yeah.
my version of a side hustle. I think it
Right.
would be so fun.
Yeah.
What do you
I
use
think
to
you're
sell your
too.
own products? Do you use Stan?
Kajabi,
Kajabi. Okay.
which like great all-in-one tool,
It's very
but
expensive.
learning Kajabi was a beast. Like it
Yeah.
is so hard to learn and like building out my own website, email funnels, like
Yeah.
all of these things that I did not understand. And if I was a first-time business owner who just like subscribed to Kajabi, I would be like, yeah, this is too much. Like I can't
Yeah.
do this. Whereas Etsy, I just feel like is so much more beginner
Yeah.
friendly and like gives you that confidence that you need to ultimately explore other streams of income. I would not have the business that I have today had I not started on
Yeah.
Etsy.
How much time do you spend like per week maintaining, researching, coming up with new products for Etsy?
To be honest, like this year has been probably my like the least time I've ever spent on it just because I've
Mm.
been launching some new products. I've been
Yeah.
doing a ton of UGC content. Like I said, I've still made a sale every single day. I would say right now, definitely less than 5 hours a week.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. What about
So,
for getting started?
so for me, I feel like I was working on my stores a ton when I
Yeah.
was first getting started, like every day, every weekend. But it's also because it didn't feel like work. It was the first
Yeah.
time that I was doing something that could potentially make me money where I didn't feel like I was working.
Yeah.
So I would just, anytime I had free time, I would take out my computer and
Yeah.
design or like get a new listing posted because it was just fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's how everybody feels right at the beginning when they're like
Yeah.
super excited about it. Because I was
Yeah.
the same when I started my stuff like years
Right.
ago. It was weekends after work. Because
Right.
yeah, it was fun. Then it
It
becomes
is
work and
fun.
it's like, oh yeah, like
I know.
you gotta refine
Yeah.
the zest for doing things.
And that's like where I'm at now is I really like my stores are mature enough that I can
Yeah.
take that step back. I can go on vacation and not look at my Etsy stores and it's totally fine.
Yeah.
And because I'm not doing order fulfillment, that's the best
Yeah.
part is like when I make sales, I don't have to
Taken
come
care
home
of.
and fulfill all of them. Yeah.
Okay, I am very interested in Etsy. This was such an interesting conversation. Can you let everybody know where they can find you and a little
Yep,
bit about, because I know you have an Etsy course, like share just a
I
little bit
do.
about that.
Yes. All of my social media platforms, Instagram and TikTok, are at Kate Robb with two B's, LLC. My website is also katerobbllc.com. And I have two courses about selling on Etsy. The first one is about print on demand products. That is my From Start to Sales course. And my second one is the digital down low, and that focuses exclusively on digital wall art files. So there is no production partner, nothing involved there. It's just digital poster prints.
Okay, I'm so interested. Okay, thank you so much for coming on. And obviously, everything is going to be in the show notes for those of you who are listening. And I'm so excited to dig into Etsy. And thank you for sharing all of this. It was great.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me. And my DMs are always open if people have questions.
Perfect. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to leave me a review. Make sure to follow me on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you next week.